And also,
We have no sound. We're not getting sound out here in TV land.
yes, Terry.
Terry, can you hear now? Terry?
Yeah, that's good. Now we got you. Lost you for a bit there.
Thank you, Terry. Okay, I'm going to recall to order the Finance Committee meeting of Thursday, January 26th, being held at the, in person at the 131 Pleasant Street Trailer Room A, and remote participation via Zoom. This meeting will be audio and video recorded. Please take care not to screen share as it will be recorded. May I have approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Is Jill on, by the
She
way?
is online.
Okay, so therefore it's roll call. Chris.
Aye.
Joanna.
Aye.
Jeremy.
Aye.
Joe.
Aye.
Peter.
Aye.
Denise. Aye. Jill.
Aye.
I did have to think about that for a moment. Okay, thank you. I am going to open the meeting to public comment on any topic that is not on our agenda. Seeing no hands or anyone making a comment, I will close the public comment.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Hi, I'm Scott Wilson. Dark skies is on the agenda for today.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
But it's a light and beautiful.
Yes, it's item number 8.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. All right. So the first article for discussion today is the discussion and potential adoption of motion of citizen warrant article about motorized vehicles.
Minutes.
Oh, minutes. Yes.
You skip that.
Okay, I did skip that. Thank you. The minutes. Anyone have any comments or additions or changes to the minutes from January 9th and January 12th? Joe?
Just one on the minutes from January 12th. There is a typo. The head of the minute says January 15th, and it's actually the minutes from January 12th. So
Okay, so with that change, is there any other changes? No?
I think that was acceptable.
Then may I have a motion to approve with the change of date as per what Joe just said, both sets of minutes?
So moved.
to approve.
Thank you. Oh, Stephen's also online. Okay, thank you. Roll call, Chris.
Aye.
Joanna.
Aye.
Jeremy.
Aye.
Joe.
Aye.
Peter.
Aye.
Jill.
Aye.
Stephen.
Aye.
Denise. Aye. Look, this time I was with it. Okay, thank you. Now we're on to, as I had jumped ahead eagerly, discussion and potential adoption of motion of citizen warrant article motorized vehicles. I'm not quoting the number because the numbering is about to change once the warrant gets finally published. So my understanding, I wasn't here January 9th when this was discussed. My understanding is that we wanted to hear from VPAC as to what their thoughts were on this, and Jason has joined as the chair of BPAC. And so that's what I would turn it over to Jason now to get their input as a committee as to what they think about this particular article, unless the committee has other questions of Bruce before we do that. Seeing none, I will ask Jason. Jason, if you would share with us what the thinking is of BPAC, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So BPAC reviewed this. I don't have the date, and they're overall, they do not support this article. And some reasons are why equity, sustainability, and just mobility in general. So BPAC actually wants more of these motorized vehicles and scooters and e-bikes. And it's less people in cars. So BPAC is for it. We do recognize that there is a safety issue out there, and we just feel like this is not the way to address it successfully. So some other solutions, just so I'm not, if it's okay, Madam Chair, just come in. So we're not just saying, don't do this and, signing out. But I think there could be spot enforcing. We'd have to work with, with the police department on how that can happen, which should be part of kind of education. We have to educate people. The majority of people who are riding scooters and those type of things that are not e-bikes are those who are going to work, who are commuting. There are kids on them too. but they're probably also in the same. So we want people to have these, and we want them to be safer. So working with the chamber and any other organizations that can get to the businesses where the majority of the usage of these, that's where they're happening. So it's lights on their bikes, it's helmets, it's safety, it's kind of the whole package. So there's going to have to be some education. And then I think that you could either regulate or educate those businesses that rent e-bikes. I know e-bikes were taken off of this, but anything that's being rented, most has control. So Sandy Pedals, they take off their top line acceleration and they cap it at 14.7 miles per hour. So those are the people who are using e-bikes, for example, the tourist. They hop on those bikes, they don't know the terrain, they don't know the curves, they don't really know where they're going. That should be regulated. And I don't know how actually we would do that besides just kind of do the right thing. But those are kind of the three solutions. Would be spot enforcing, a ton of education, which I know we've been talking about for 20 years on educating people on bike etiquette, and now it's motorized. So BPAC does not support this, even though we recognize that we agree that there's a problem, but this isn't the solution.
Thank you, Jason. Committee members, questions for Jason? Joe?
Jason, does BPAC have any particular, I don't know, statistics or data on, bicycle or wheeled vehicle to pedestrian collisions beyond what the police department does or doesn't have? I'm just curious whether you keep track of any, I don't know, accidents, that are bicycle oriented.
We don't. So the police have some data, the hospital has some data, and then the state has some data. And that was one of Ian Golding's articles years ago, was trying to kind of force the issue of trying to have one data collection source working with everybody to find those. And so the answer is no, we don't have that data. But those are the three areas that we would need to talk to. We don't need to know HIPAA, we just need to know, was there a bike accident? Where was it?
And when I went to the police department and asked them about that specifically, and they said, if it's a car bike accident, so then they would have information. If it's a bike to bike or any other thing, they don't have any information.
Right, and the hospital has some information, and so there's different ways to report it, but we don't have a clear cut. Because what BPAC wanted, this is years ago, we wanted to find out where the hot spots were. Is it Fairgrounds bike path? Is it Mattica? Like, where do they most happen? Is it sand? Is it line of sight? That would be helpful to have.
Thank you, Jason. Jill, you have a question?
Yeah, that's really helpful, Jason. I wondered if you could expand a little bit when you said that you wanted to have more access to more bikes and kind of small motorized-ish electric. I don't want to call them vehicles because they're not. I think that's some of the problem here, but maybe you could expand on that since you really know, and I'm not sure.
I think not everybody can hop on the bus and move. So when you have more mobility, you have more access to jobs, to get to a second job, to not have to pay for an Uber. And with all the constraints of living here with housing and I don't have to explain it to all, we all know it. This is one thing that is more affordable for people. So it's an equity issue and it's increased mobility. But there is, we've probably all seen it or experienced it when someone almost causes an accident and zips around you, and it's not using these safely.
Thank you. It's very helpful.
And that could also be true, Jason, for people on bicycles. It has nothing to do with it being motorized. It has everything to do with just being safe on bicycles as well.
Yes, I agree.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from the committee before I ask Bruce?
Okay.
Bruce, go ahead.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate this opportunity.
He's muted. Bruce, you're muted.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate this. We're focusing a lot in our discussion here about motorized bicycles. And the objective of the article is the safety of the pedestrians that are using sidewalks and paths. The town now calls them side paths. And it's to protect them from the hazard, not just from one single type of motorized vehicle. There's 6 or 7 of these things that we want to update Chapter 98 on, because Chapter 98 lists these motorized vehicles already. And these devices are not supposed to be on sidewalks. And that's one of the objectives here, is to update the list of vehicles not allowed on sidewalks. The other purpose is to equate sidewalks with bike paths, because we want to give the pedestrian users of the side paths the same safety level that they get on sidewalks. And the reason it needs updating is, look, the article was created almost 2 decades ago, and it only listed 3 types of motorized vehicles. And it was scooters, skateboards, and segways. And since then, they've invented many more motorized vehicles that ought to be added to the list that's not allowed on sidewalks. And Nantucket's bike paths were never intended to be used by motorized vehicles. They were created for use by pedestrians and non-motorized bicycles. And I just want to remind the committee for a moment that there's no changes to the language of 98, Chapter 98. We're not rewriting it. We don't adversely affect businesses by adding these new motorized vehicles to the items that aren't allowed on sidewalks. There are no anticipated costs to the town. Enforcement remains exactly the same way as it is now, passive. Market Conservation Association endorsed the concept because there have been accidents on the bike path in Matticat. The Civic League's president's meeting endorsed it. And to remind you, the list of these motorized vehicles includes scooters, mopeds, one-wheel rollerboards, self-balancing unicycles and skateboards that are motorized, razor boards, and powered bicycles. I understand the concerns that some of us have expressed about motorized bicycles. I own an e-bike, but I don't use it on sidewalks or side paths. And I've not had any safety issues riding on the roads to go shopping. I've sent you, the committee, the specs on the devices that are on the list, including the e-bikes and the scooters and the mopeds. I've given you hundreds of pages of reference materials. The most notable was, to me, was in the Netherlands, that has the highest density of non-motorized bicycle usage in all of Europe. Motorized bikes are not permitted on their bike paths. For safety.
Bruce, I believe that this was discussed at length on January 9th, so I
Okay,
really
well,
don't.
thank you very much for this opportunity, and I'm happy to answer any questions. But I
Thank
just
you.
want to remind the committee, it's not just about e-bikes. This article addresses
Thank you.
other motorized vehicles.
Thank you. And we have the document you sent. It was sent out to the members of the committee. I have it open in front of me, so we have it. We have it to refer to for our discussion. Are there
Thank
any
you, ma'am.
questions of Bruce before I go ahead, Peter?
Bruce, the other motorized vehicles besides e-bikes are what scares me even more, putting them on the roads. Many of them are low. Many of them don't have the same safety features that the e-bikes have. And I think that's very, very scary, having all those motorized vehicles. Vehicles is the correct word, on the road. Also, mopeds right now are not allowed on the bike paths or the sidewalks. So I don't understand why they would even be in the same discussion. So that's something that you really have to give me some answers on, because I don't understand that. And I think that we're really talking about bike paths, not sidewalks in general, if I'm not misunderstanding the discussion.
Mhm.
So bringing up sidewalks, I think, is a separate issue.
I didn't explain myself properly then. Chapter 98 addresses sidewalks and it lists a couple of motorized vehicles that are around them. And the objective of the article is to add those motorized vehicles from being not allowed to use on the sidewalks. And we agree with you about some of these vehicles don't belong on the roads. There's only 31 miles of side paths on the island, and there's almost 300 miles of roads on the the island. Those uniboards and motorized skateboards and things of that nature that I'm listing, they're already being used on the roads. So what we're trying to say with the article is keep them off the sidewalks. That's what chapter 98 addresses. And then I'm trying to equate the bike paths, the sidewalk paths with bike paths, with the sidewalks, excuse me, because they're used for the same purpose now that we've developed everything over the last almost 2 decades, where pedestrians and people pushing baby strollers and whatnot are using the bike paths, which, you know, they're still going to be able to be used according to this article for non-motorized bicycle users who travel to work, who travel to shop and everything else.
Okay, Bruce, thank you. Any other questions for Bruce before I close the public comment portion of this discussion? Okay, thank you. I am now closing, I have a motion to close the public comment discussion to begin deliberations on a potential motion. So may I have a motion to close the public comment?
So moved.
Second, thank you. Roll call, Jill,
Aye.
Stephen.
Aye.
Chris.
Aye.
Joanna. Jeremy.
Aye.
Joe.
Aye.
Peter.
Aye.
Denise, aye. Thank you. Okay. Does the committee have enough information to make a motion today? Yeah. Yes,
Yes.
overall, Jill, Stephen, are you comfortable?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so would somebody like to propose a motion and then we will discuss the motion?
I'll make a motion not to adopt.
Okay.
Second.
And there's a second, okay, now may we have deliberation on the motion?
Oh, I didn't quite hear it.
Stephen said motion not to adopt and Peter seconded it.
I think we've really covered all the thing. I think if in a perfect world, it would be nice to have 2 paths. We don't have a perfect world, and I think the danger of having all these small vehicles on the roads more than offset the dangers of having them on the bike paths. So in terms of the bike paths, I think we should stick with not adopt.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Any other comments?
Rather than up or down, I just have a question for all of us. It seems that as written, this is probably not going to work. But everyone acknowledges there is a problem. And everyone seems to acknowledge that some degree of enforcement, some degree of education would be helpful. It may not be perfect. How do we move, or is it our role, question for us to try and take a stab at the problem without just up or down on this one motion? Or maybe that's not our role.
It's not our role. So our role, Jason being on is the chair of BPAC, unless he's gone already. Jason, are you still there?
No.
Oh, Jason's gone.
Nope,
He is. Jason is the chair of BPAC, understands the issue, and that's what the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee, I believe it's called.
Correct. Yes.
Wow, look at that.
That was
So
pretty good.
Yeah. I'm doing better with my alphabet commissions.
Oh.
They understand the issue and they're, they will have this on their agenda for coming up with a solution. Occasionally, we can make a comment in respect of articles, but it's very occasionally. And it's really up for us to make a motion or make a recommendation that the voters then vote on at town meeting. And so to just to complete the circle, if motion not to adopt passes at town meeting, Bruce would stand up, speak about this for 5 minutes, offer up a positive motion, and then it would go forward from there as to whether that positive motion was the one that was voted on. So, okay, So are we ready to take a vote? All right, Stephen? And the motion is motion not to adopt.
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Joanna? Aye. Jeremy?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Peter?
Aye.
Denise, aye. That passes unanimously. Thank you. Thank you, Bruce. Okay. All right, next on the agenda. Gotta flip back to my agenda. I'm just gonna grab this. Next on the agenda, that's not us.
HDC.
Thank you. It's the, is Diane on?
Yes, she is.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the warrant, citizens warrant article about adding an HDC administrator. And Diane, I will turn the floor over to you. My recommendation is because you only get 5 minutes to speak about this at town meeting. Realizing that we need a little bit more information than that, please speak, maybe up to 10 minutes, and then I'll ask you to stop talking so the committee can then ask you questions, because we tend to get good information by the back and forth, and we'll go from there. So it's over to you, Diane. Thank you for being here.
Her dear boy.
Diane, you're muted.
Diane, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
Is her picture up?
No.
There is a picture, but there's no video, there's
There,
no.
there you go. Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay, I guess I was trying to do the letter that I wrote and this on the same thing, and I guess I cannot. I am asking for the HCC to have its own advisor. As it did in 2016, when this was broken down. We had an advisor that was reported to the town administrator. And we covered our own things. We had our own people working for us. We had, I guess, four that were dedicated to the HDC. And they were our staff, and they helped us and did the whatever. It is important. The simplest thing is when somebody brings in an application to be given to the HDC, if somebody else at the counter does it, they don't look to see if it's fully done, if it's all the way we wanted to. It goes into the HDC and then comes on to our agenda, and it has to be rejected because it doesn't follow rules. It is very important to have an administrator that is knowledgeable of historic and architectural concerns, are not in any way saying that the existing staff that we use are unable to do this. I am saying that we need more people to help us, and they have to be dedicated to the HDC so that we can perform our duties as we are required to. We have many applications, and we have 3 people maybe working on it. If we have our own advisor, they can run the show. They can say, this is what we're doing, this is what we need to do, and we would report to the town, to Libby. We would not remove ourselves from Plus. We don't want to do that. We just want to report the way the health department and park and rec and stuff are individual commissions and report to Libby. This is very important as to our our advisory boards were knocked out one day for no particular reason. They said they were against the rules. I have many papers here and I would be delighted to email them to you that says we do have permission to appoint our own advisory staff, and it has not been contested and said on through. That is done by a lawyer by the name of Anderson and Krager. We have been trying to get this straightened out since, I don't know, since it happened. We did get the sign committee reestablished, but we didn't get the rest of it. In order to perform our work, we need to have knowledge that the people that are working for us are working for the HCC. As you think of staff being, in all the years that I've been around, staff was somebody who helped your committee. Our particular staff reports to Plus, and they can enter and discuss anything with Plus that they want to, that does, and they have no requirement to inform us. And this sort of creates, which I feel is like two HTCs. The elected board that are 8 people, 5 of the commissioners and 3 extra ones. And then HTCB, which reports to Andrew Vorse, and they do what they want. They are not under. We have to publicize everything that we do. We don't say a word that is not public to the people. I don't know whether you all have heard the mission that we work with, that the National Register of Historic Place lists more than 5,000 contributing structures in our district, comprises some 30,000 acres. It is the largest conventional national historic landmark district in the contiguous United States. That's quite a privilege for Nantucket to have. And they differentiate. There's the town, which you know, the old historic district, bigger one that we are working on. We are trying to put together an efficient HTC, but it has to be working to do it. It's working together. It's not working at odd ends. The other thing, it says, to effect these protections, the HTC's mission, its charge under the act is to promote the general welfare of the inhabitants of the town of Nantucket through the preservation and protection of historic buildings, places, and districts of historic interest through the development of an appropriate setting for these buildings, places, and districts, and through a benefit resulting to the economy of Nantucket in developing and maintaining its vacation travel industry through the promotion of these historic associations in the matters of HCC. In these matters, the HCC is the sole adjudicatory authority. And it goes on, but that's what we work with, and that's what we worked with before 2016. We've had Andrew, Mark Voigt was on for 17 years as our administrator, and we worked with him in complete faith. And if we needed advice from him, he offered it, it was accepted. This is important. We're trying to say that the HCC is, as the mission said, the most important commission going. And we need to have the freedom to do as we are asked and not be overrun by another commission. So I don't know, I can go on, but
No, Diane, that's,
I want to
I think that's,
reinstate
I
that
think
the people,
I think that's a logical stop, Diane, that's a logical stopping point, and I will turn it over to the members of the finance committee to ask questions at this point. So looking to my members, Peter?
Thank you.
Thank you,
Diane,
Diane.
when you explain it, it sounds to me like you needed an administrative assistant rather than a manager. The responsibilities that you read off, et cetera, were all secretarial or process oriented, not decision-making types of responsibilities.
no, that,
That's. the
no,
end of my
that
question.
is not true. We, let me just, can I answer that?
Please.
Yes,
He-
please, go
An
ahead.
administrator will survey. The administrator will survey what papers come in, what the questions are on it. He knows whether something is architect or is historic, but whether it's architecturally correct. We have a very good person who does the rest of the work you just mentioned. We need somebody to lead us and do it as an administrator, just like the other commissions have, that take hold and lead the HCC down a path that will get the work that we have done. And that takes a person with knowledge, with education, knowledge. And whether it's from college knowledge or whatever it is. And like Holly has that knowledge, but we need somebody that sits for us as an administrator for the HDC,
Thank you.
not a secretary. We have the secretary.
Okay, thank you, Diane. Joe?
Hi, Diane. This is Joe Grouse, one of the committee members. Diane, what is the position on your article of the other members of the HDC?
They're all for it. You must have letters. Everybody sent letters. We've been trying to get in front of the select board. I'm not saying, I see Holly's thing, I'm not saying she is not an elected commissioner. The elected commissioners, you should have letters from them all saying they all back it. Abby,
Diane,
Camp,
Diane, we don't.
Val,
Diane,
Oliver, Carrie,
Diane,
Thornwell.
Diane, we don't. We have a letter
Yeah.
from Val Oliver. And we have a letter from Abby Camp, and that's all. We do not have letters from the rest of the commissioners stating in favor of this article.
Oh, Mickey Rowland's not a commissioner.
I don't know, is he?
No.
I don't think so.
He's on a different committee.
Who's another commissioner?
So Mickey Rowland sent in a letter in favor of
Yep.
this article. Abby Camp did, and Val Oliver. Those are the three letters that we got.
Okay, well, I would get to more. I could send you the things that they signed when it went in front of the select board, asking to be heard about the advisory committees, and it was signed by all five of us.
But that's
don't know.
not the administrator, Diane. That's not the article that's in front of us. We're not talking about the advisory committees. We're talking about your article.
Well, I will get to that because I have copies of it and I don't, I thought it had gone in, but obviously it did not, but can put it into you tomorrow.
So you're saying Ray Pole, Stephen Welsh, I don't know who else is on the HCC besides
Abby,
those two.
Am, Val,
Yes, we have
Oliver,
Abby's and Val.
and my,
That's, yes. But you're saying Ray and Stephen would also support this article.
Well, that,
I have Ray's and Stevens.
as a
What?
follow-on question, Diane, I'm curious then
I
if,
didn't,
as you say, the entire HDC board is in support of this request, number one, why is the article only in your name? Number one, and number two, why isn't this being dealt with administratively as an internal, HR or staffing matter? I don't understand why this is has to come to the town meeting to fill a
Because
job.
because we have been trying to get it done at the select board. And the last meeting of the select board where we had a letter, it was challenged by Esmeralda and Holly Backus. That was, I don't know how long ago that was. We're trying to get it through as simply as possible. All we have to do is get it. The warrant is in my name because the other people were busy to do what I have been doing. And I was asked to take it on. And I said I would. I've been on this committee 22 years, longer than anybody else. And I haven't stayed on it for the fun of it or the name of it. I stayed on it because it is very, very important to me that the HCC stays the most important commission, and does not get sucked in and disappear. This is what gives you this island. Is not the historic value of this island important enough to give us somebody who will help us put it together so it stays together and we do what you need to have done? That's
Diane,
what-
thank you. Diane,
Okay, sorry.
Jeremy has a question. And Holly, I know you've raised your hand. I'll come to you, but I also want to get through first the finance committee's questions and then I'll go to staff. So Jeremy?
Hi Denise, this is Jeremy Bloomer. Could you just give me the rough metrics, because I just don't know them, of how many applications a year the HGC reviews, number one. Number two, how many support staff in the town do you have to help with that?
We have Holly would be able to tell you how many we have in a year because I haven't got a clue. If you want to know the truth, I don't know. We have many. We did 100 and some odd today. We now going back to 2 meetings a week. We have a 5-hour meeting and then an hour and a half meeting to get them done. Holly is one of the people that work. We have Esmeralda who works, and we have 8.
I saw that, but I thought there would be variability.
We have Adrian, we have 3 there that are there most of the time and work for us and are very good. No question with them. It's just we need an administrator who knows how to do the historic business that we're required to do.
Okay, thank you, Diane.
Diane,
Go ahead.
really, this seems like a fairly straightforward process question of, you're getting 80 a week and there's going to be a high, a low on that. And there's so many people supporting you and there's a backlog of so many because you don't have enough people to process it. So that delays it. Seems, I guess I'm with you. Why are we looking at this as opposed to?
No, we're looking at it because it's a citizen warrant article. Right? But I would also offer, Jill has a question and Joanna has a question. I've got lifesaver in my mouth. It's not the best time to have it.
Hey Denise, my question is actually for you, Denise.
ahead,
Denise,
Jill.
do you know how many, or does somebody know how many administrators we have for these other commissions she's talking about? Because I didn't think we did. You go to the zoning board, they have like an administrative assistant. It's not someone really advising on the decisions.
Yeah, so let me go to Holly, because Holly knows all. And Holly, I'm going to have you speak to both Jill's question and then in some of the other topics. So I think you can enlighten us before we go any further.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Where to begin? So the HDC has an HDC compliance coordinator who's also a land use specialist. There's another land use specialist who also assists the HDC, and then myself as the town's preservation planner. I'm staff liaison to both the HDC and the Historical Commission. So there's 3 of us who handle a lot of the heavy lifting, if you will. But then we also within Plus, because Plus is a cog, I like to call, in a big wheel, where there's no silos over here. We all work together. We have 6 administrative staff members who work in Plus. Everything from handling a lot of HDC applications with the public to building permits to inspections and the zoning board and planning board. These administrative staff basically are or assist HDC in multiple aspects. I would say from about 100% of their time all the way down to about 30%, where they're, again, receiving applications, assisting the public coming in here, date stamping applications, fielding status of applications. So we can't do our job without them. They, again, assist us. I'm going to sit here and say what I've said publicly when this citizen warrant article was brought before the Historical Commission as a discussion from Mrs. Coombs, but this was, or Commissioner Coombs, but this position has been gone since 2016. But as we stand right now, I'm calling this position a unicorn. There is no unicorn. There is not a one size fits all, one person that can handle the administrative function of the HDC. This is a team effort. We all work together, making sure that the Historic District Commission is able to process their applications every week. Somebody had asked a question about how many applications. I have to defer to my colleague who I work with day in, day out, who's actually in another meeting at the moment. But Esmeralda is our HDC compliance coordinator, land use specialist. She's the one who when the applications are brought through with our administrative staff, she's the one who gets them all on the agenda, making sure everything is right there, gets them all on the website. Every single HDC application goes on the website, by the way, and is posted in time, making sure we're meeting all those requirements. It's about 80 to 100 new applications for each new business week. That's every other week. And then for old business weeks, that's about between 20 and 40. That's on average. And that doesn't include the inspections that are done by my other colleague, Billy, who he's another land use specialist who also does work with zoning as well on the zoning board. He's been doing about, I think, 40 inspections weekly. So again, this is a multiple staff effort. And quite frankly, hearing that we need somebody with architectural background. I have a double bachelor's degree in historic preservation and art and architectural history in the School of Architecture from Roger Williams University, graduate certificate in historic preservation from the University of Florida's Preservation Institute, Nantucket. I'm a Nantucket native. I know Nantucket history. I felt very personal to this, and I'll leave it at that. To answer the question about the HDC, to be able to talk about this application or this, warrant article, the HDC has not been able to fully do it. They have had it on the beginning of the agenda per Commissioner Coombs' request. However, as with the amount of applications on the agenda for the commission, that has been discussed briefly and then requested for a special meeting. As of last week, that was supposed to be on a special meeting on Thursday, but that was canceled due to sickness. And then unfortunately they weren't able to meet. And it's going to be scheduled for next Thursday. So not in time, unfortunately, for you all. They have not had a chance to discuss. And I don't believe that because that was my question originally, was why wasn't this article brought before the commission that Commissioner Coombs sits on, before going to this far to a citizen warrant article? It's not necessary. And I do also want to mention too, staff has no authority under the special act as it's written. That special act was written in 1955. It's been amended about a dozen times since then. And of course, that takes a home rule petition. We do not want to open it up willy-nilly. We want to do it. I was here before you all last year about another article. We don't want to do that willy-nilly. I've been advised by the state and Massachusetts Historic Preservation Office, MHC, that we don't want to do that. We want to be very careful if we do. And the only thing that staff, myself, Billy, and Esmeralda pretty much do, if we're able to approve any applications on our own to help lighten the load for the commission, as that's been said, is only specific like-kind applications, if you're replacing your roof, those type of things, and then anything that the commission has approved through staff. Anything else, staff does not have any authority. Everything has to go to the commission. You could say that's a double-edged sword. From when the town I guess people from town meeting back in 1970, after Tristram's Landing, that was a catalyst of creating the entire island as a historic district. So we are one and the same. We have the entire island is a local district. The entire island is a National Historic Landmark District, registered everything with the National Register. Therefore, there's no donut holes within the HDC's jurisdiction. That is unique for any historic district out there. I believe we're the only one. So yes, as the size of our historic district has grown, the amount of anything, all the applications that come through, that could be looked at as a double-edged sword, but we're managing as best we can. I'll leave you at this. If you said that we needed somebody in addition to help the staff, I think we have quite a bit of staff here. Maybe that would be another technical person like myself that has a preservation background. I have said this to, I believe I've said this to both commissions, that it would be nice to have somebody in addition. But again, HDC administrator, I think that is a unicorn that doesn't exist. So those are my comments. Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Holly. Questions for Holly? First Joanna and then Jeremy.
So Holly, you are, this is a clarifying question before I have my real question. When you are talking about requiring home rule petition for this, that is to have people outside of the commission approve what you're calling basic applications, or we would need a home rule petition to authorize the hiring of an administrator?
Your first question goes to a home rule petition. Yes.
Okay. So
obviously-
okay.
Yeah.
So this HDC administrator could not triage the applications and approve
Correct.
a bunch of them before it
Right.
gets to the
Correct.
HDC.
Correct.
Now,
The
this-
commission has the authority.
So the second question I have is, so when you guys accept an application, is there a person who's going through that file and basically returning the ones that are not complete? Like, is that basic level of triage happening?
For the most part, yes. Yes,
Oh.
that is through our staff. We have a staff member, plus what I call the cog of us over here, who receives every single application. They have to be put into our InterGov permitting software system. And then they go through a couple other admins. But Esmeralda, the HDC compliance coordinator, is the one who creates the agendas. We're getting better, I think, on making sure that applications are complete. I will tell you that because of the amount of applications that come through here, yes, sometimes there is an application that maybe it shouldn't have gone to the commission. Maybe we need some clarification. I think the commission does a really good job of understanding where staff comes from on that. Sometimes it happens, we're all human. But I think that is done. We have a really good team here. And I think both the planning director and the deputy director would agree with that. We have a really good team over here in Plus. We all, are able to make sure that, if there's questions that need to be answered on an application, whether it's for the HDC or another board, we all work together. So a lot of this is, administrative. And yes, this unfortunately, I don't think this warrant article should have gone this direction. It should have been something done internally on administration. So.
Jeremy, you have a question for Holly?
Holly, I was hoping you could help define the problem that this amendment or this warrant article is trying to address. As I understand it from what you said, you have 3 direct support or 2.5 full-time equivalents supporting HEC and you have a number of 6 other people doing various things. Today, you're doing 80 a week. Is that 4,000 a year of applications that are coming through the HDC from what you said?
Madam Chair, through you.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So we're also a certified local government as of March of 2021 through the National Park Service. We're the 27th community within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And what that does is give us basically access to federal funding. It also gives us direct access to people at the State Historic Preservation Office. And it also basically is saying Nantucket utilizes historic preservation as an utmost part of our planning efforts across the board. And I had to provide my first report to this Massachusetts Historical Commission in September. And I had approximately calculated almost 2,500 COAs that the HDC has processed within the last fiscal year.
What's a COA?
A certificate of appropriateness. That's what your approval is that you get from the HDC. That's good for 3 years.
So my questions, you guys do a lot of good stuff and you have a lot of different roles. But on this one additive person, I'm trying to understand the nature of the problem it's trying to solve. So for example, if somebody submits an application today and it goes through the whole, the cow goes through the snake and it takes 5 months. Would one person make sure the cow goes through the snake in 4 months? What would one extra person do so that we understand, what part of the problem would it solve? And I'm trying to understand a metric, and I understand also there's a lot of complexity in this.
Before, Holly, before you speak to that, is Leslie on still?
Yeah.
Leslie, I would like your thoughts before we'll get back to, we won't forget your question, Jeremy, but I think one of the issues is that I would really rather see personally the end-to-end process. I would want to see from the time somebody wants to build something till they get their permits closed. How does the process work? Where does the bottleneck actually sit? And not just sit here and say, well, it seems like it would be solved by an HDC administrator.
Right.
I just, for me,
It's a systems issue.
it's spot cleaning.
Classic process.
It is a
It's spot,
systems
we're
issue.
spot cleaning
Yeah.
and the whole code is
Yeah.
dirty.
Yes.
That's a really bad analogy, but you know what I'm trying to say here.
No,
You know,
I agree.
You're eating from the middle of the pizza. So I'm not getting any better with my analogies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Better.
Going through the snake.
That I didn't even understand.
Oh, you didn't?
So, no. So anyway, so when we're having this discussion, it doesn't, frankly, for me, would an HDC administrator figure that out? Unless we've done time motion studies for the end-to-end process, we're not gonna know that. So, Leslie, do you want to jump in and save me from myself? And then I'll see if there's any more questions from the committee.
Yes, thank you for recognizing me. I can't figure out how to raise my hand. The button isn't here, so I've been trying to get someone's attention. So, I think this thing with the HDC administrator, we did have a position that was the HDC administrator for many years. And, by the time it was phased out, it wasn't working. I mean, the HDC wasn't working when we created Plus. That was part of the issue among other things that came to Plus. So, we have more staff right now dedicated to HDC, as Holly said, than they've had in a very long time, possibly ever. And their operations that are driven by the elected members of the HDC are clunky and they're outdated and they take a lot of staff labor. And we've tried to talk with them many times over the years about improving the way that they function as an elected board. And we haven't really been able to make a lot of headway. And the response can't just be add more people, add more people, add more people. They have to take some action to make it more modernized. I mean, right now they still have a triplicate application. The staff today, I saw them all, hand stamping plan after plan after plan. And, at the meetings, they're, delving into a lot of things that I think could be improved. So, adding a staff person, I don't think is the answer. I mean, everyone always needs more help, but I think they need to look internally about how they're functioning and to see, what steps can be taken. Adding another staff person via warrant article is, first of all, not even binding, but second of all, like, we didn't have an internal conversation, through department heads to talk about that, which would be the most appropriate step. And, our staff here works really, really hard. They do a great job. They're very knowledgeable. They help the public. They, try to make the process as simple as they can. And I think, this type of article is really insulting to all of the effort that they put forward every day. And so I don't think it's necessary.
Thank you, Leslie.
Yeah.
Any questions for Leslie?
No.
Okay. Any further questions?
Sorry,
of Diane?
Denise, I
Steven?
did have a question. Yeah,
Okay,
Leslie,
go ahead.
years ago, like, I don't know, 6 years ago, not forever, but a while ago, we talked about a lot of efforts to modernize Plus, and we were cross-training people and, a lot of things that have come to fruition since then. Do we have metrics about how much faster things get done, or maybe that's not even the right question to ask, but anything that we use now to measure the progress that we've made from all the educational and other resources, other investments we've made in Plus?
I don't have any specific metrics, but I think what you would find if you talk to people who come here every day, they will tell you that it's much more efficient, that the staff is much more helpful and informed about all of the different things that happen here. We don't have a situation like we did when Plus was formed, where you came in and talked to person A and they said, well, that's not my job, go talk to person B. And then person B would say, that's not my job, go talk to person C. That's never going to happen if you come here. Someone's going to either know the answer and help you, or they're going to find the right person and help you. So that in itself, says a lot. We did a survey with our customers probably right before COVID, and we got really, really great results. And most of it was, all of the staff is really helpful and really knowledgeable. So I think, from a customer service perspective, everything here runs really, really well. But again, like, when you're submitting applications to elected boards and commissions that control a lot of the process, that's something that's out of our hands at the staff level, unless they're, willing to work with us to make improvements. Oh, and I'll just add, someone asked about the number of applications they reviewed. According to our annual town report, last year, the HDC issued just under 2,500 certificates of appropriateness. And our
Thank
staff did about 800 inspections.
How many applications? I understand.
Thank you.
That's the end.
Okay. Other questions from the committee before I turn it back to Diane?
Can I ask one? To Lindsley, she seemed to know, I'm just curious.
Okay, go ahead.
Of the 2,500 approvals, how long were they in the system to get to that approval?
I don't have an answer to that. I mean, some of them come in, they're heard within, a week or two, and they're approved and they're moved along. Some things that are more complicated, take a little longer with revisions and other things. So it really depends on the scope of the project. It depends on the complexity of it, depends on neighbors and other people that are involved. But I would say most things are turned around within, maybe a month, Holly. Well, once it gets to the commission, how about that? Because they have a bit of a backlog.
Yeah, I think you said it right, Leslie. It's really depends on what type of application is, whether it's contentious or not, if it's simple, if it's, there's a lot of different factors that come into play. So it's really hard to quantify the time frame on some of these. Some of them could be heard right then and there and not, but you could also ask, because there is a little bit of a backlog of how many applications they have before them to review. So it really all depends.
And one thing I'd like to make an observation on, as the HTC themselves have not discussed this citizens warrant article, it would probably be prudent to let them discuss it and come back to us. And then that way we can then make a motion appropriately once we've gotten the input from the HDC themselves, unless anyone is very eager to make a motion tonight.
If the HDC discuss it and decide they need another person, wouldn't they do it through the proper channels and go through select board? And why would it be a warrant?
Well, it's probably one
I mean,
already too late,
in an article.
right? It's already too late for this year.
Yeah, but the select board can figure out a way to fund it. I mean, if that was gonna be the case.
Well,
I mean, we can't have committees hiring people all over the
I
town.
agree. I
You
agree.
know, it just,
I
it's
agree.
crazy.
I think we have another issue that's gonna crop up here, which is that the public who votes at the town meeting is not all that sympathetic sometimes to the HDC and may see this as an answer to getting their application heard more quickly. So I think that there's that piece of this that will have an impact on the voters.
Okay,
So,
let me let Diane talk, and then I want to close the public hearing before
Okay.
we
okay.
deliberate anything. Okay. Diane, do you want to
Yeah.
add something?
Just quickly, to answer Leslie, we have supported our staff completely and never said anything wrong, and I'm sorry that it was brought up. We have high praises both for Holly and for Esmeralda and for Adrian. Second thing is, we are working right now as we speak, and we have been doing it to the conduct for application hearings was adopted 11/17 of 22 to make it the rule that the applicants come in and they do this 1 through 5 to get it through the fastest way that there is. We are working very hard to improve our working ability. Second of all, we have a application that's in front of us almost 4 years now, and it still hasn't been decided. So you can't tell. We certainly do more than 80 applications in a 5-hour night. And we're not just, I don't know, I've been this and I see us work. I've worked there. I've been on the board, as I say, for 22 years, and never have we just walked away with 10 or 15 unless the other meeting was slow because it was a vacation. It was a storm and the guys didn't come in on Zoom, and there we were. I would like some help. All we're asking for is help. Nobody is saying, let us be, out there by ourselves and that's it. I said we didn't want to separate from Plus, and we don't. We want to just get our job done with some respect from the people we work with, and we have great respect for them. And that's an outside statement, because I was really upset that the thought should come by that we do not back our staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Leslie, I'll get one more comment from you, and then I'm going to close the public hearing piece.
Thank you. One of the committee members, I think it was Joanna, asked about, how you would normally add a staff person. I just wanted to say that, normally if a board or committee felt like they needed extra help, they would come and talk with the department head and we would review it. And if we agreed at budget time, we would put in an expense increase request to add the other position. It would be reviewed by town administration and finance, and then it would be included in the budget or not. So that's the proper protocol for that.
Thank you, Leslie. Stephen?
Through you to Diane, is the kind of help that you're looking for, like commentary on applications that might appear on an agenda in the same way that an agenda packet at the ZBA or the planning board has staff comments and recommendations for action from the board? Is that what
Yeah.
you're looking for?
That's what our advisory committees were, being that, like the HASHAB, which is the historic in town. It's very hard to cover for us to cover every building. And it's when, like in Sconset, Sconset runs its own little group, and we're all Sconset people, and they had an idea what Sconset was like. I've lived here for 50 years. We may know what the downtown is, but I don't know what the feeling is in Sconset. There may be some area that's very thin. So it's giving us useful information so that we can make a good decision on whether we pass something or not. And sometimes it takes very few times, except with the two buildings at the hotel that burned down. We passed that the other night, one time. And the building at 4-step with it, we passed that also, which was wonderful, so they can start the rehabilitation of those buildings. It's very hard to say that we do 80 a time. That's silly, because most of the time, I don't know, I just counted up while we were talking, because I have Tuesday's agenda, and we had 35 new applications on Tuesday. No, I lie, we had 40. So our agenda fluctuates up and down, and we ask for as much help as we can get. And that Abby or Holly has done it so that the consents are now being done by the committee members, and they are signed. Things like that make it, if something goes wrong and we're held responsible, we can go back and get all the information of who did it, how, why. This is what is necessary to run a proper office. So anyway, I will go back. The reason we haven't discussed this beforehand is because for one reason or another, it has been not made it onto the agenda. Typically, the first one went on the agenda this summer in July, and it still hasn't made it for one reason or another. We will go on. We have discussion next Thursday because Tuesday was going to be so busy. So next Thursday, we're going to have this discussion, and we will forward to you the results of that discussion.
Okay, thank you, Diane. Okay, folks, I'm starting to run out of steam on this topic, to be honest. I think it's getting a little circular. I will listen to Angus quickly, and then I will listen to Holly quickly, and then we will draw a line under it and forward it to a future meeting once the HTC themselves have weighed in on on the citizens warrant article. So Angus?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm actually here for the lighting article, but I couldn't help but to comment on this. There is a lot to unpack. There are many facets to this issue. I know that the sincere intention of Diane's article is not meant to insult the existing system, but a cry for help. The issue is not about processing applications faster. It's about the appropriateness of the applications that are coming before the board. And for doing this for nearly 40 years myself as an applicant, and the past, six or 8 years of processing applications as advisory board member on Sconset and town, the numbers have increased dramatically of what is inappropriate that is being passed, not passed, but passed through to be reviewed. And since 2016, the applications more and more are incomplete, and so it takes more time to process, and the applications go on for longer. So you might have 2,500 applications that have been approved, but you might have 4 times as many meetings as necessary because of how inappropriate they were.
Angus, I really want you got 1 more minute on this.
Well, just to say that when I first started doing this in the mid 80s, And there was a dedicated HTC office on Washington Street where you would go in. There were members there who said, you know, this dormer is too large, this building's too high, this yada, yada. And so you would tailor it and then it would go to the HTC and it passed within a week or two. And it was a much quicker and easier process. And I think that that's the kind of help that is needed for the HTC. That's all I have to say. And thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Angus. Okay, Holly, did you want to say one more thing before we close this
Yes.
topic for tonight?
Thank
Okay.
you, Madam Chair. I have 3 points and hopefully I'll make it quick. One, my position has been in its place since 2019. About the end of 2019, beginning of 2020 with the pandemic is when I've been providing comments. My comments have been provided to the commission, I think, for quite a while, that there are more comments provided by staff on applicable applications as their technical staff member. On the topic of the agenda for the HDC that Commissioner Coombs had referenced, the chairs wanted to review at their normal Tuesday night meetings because of the amount of applications they had before them, and therefore, when it was on the agenda, it was okay. Let's have this on a separate meeting. So again, I appreciate you wanting them to discuss. And 3. I think I would be remiss if I didn't say that the amount of applications that have gone before the HDC over the last few years, the days of 37 Washington Street, I remember it well as a kid, you know, are long gone. And unfortunately, this individual sitting down with people is difficult. However, it does happen. I will tell you the Veranda House went through really, really well this past week because I was brought into the process really early, had a one-on-one Zoom call with their agent and their architects, and able to decipher and get it, make sure the application that was going before the commission was going to be sufficient for them to basically approve, and that they were able to. Yes, that does happen on a case-by-case basis, thanks to basically having a technical staff on staff. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Holly. Thank you very much. Is Libby on? Libby, are you on?
Sure. Yes, I am.
So Libby, my question, I remember at a couple of select boards ago that the select board was going to kind of look at the end-to-end process on this with the HTC. Is that still something they're considering? Because again, this seems like we're fixing a problem before we have a problem truly identified, if they're going to look at the end-to-end HTC process.
Yes, we have an upcoming meeting that we are working on scheduling with the chairs of HDC, Planning Commission, Select Board, myself, the planning director, the preservation planner. And this is one of the items on the agenda. We've discussed an independent review of how the HDC itself operates. And that we think could be quite helpful.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to close the public comment on this. A motion, may I have a motion to close? Thank you. And roll call, Chris,
Aye.
Joanna, Jeremy,
Yes.
Joe,
Aye.
Stephen,
Aye.
Jill,
Hi.
Peter,
Aye.
Denise, I. Okay, thank you. We will hold off any further discussions on this until we
I'll
hear.
just make a comment. I mean, I think
Please.
it's fine to hold off, but I think from my perspective, the bar would have to be so high for us to weigh in to recommend legislating a personnel decision like this. That it's almost inconceivable.
I second that. I think,
Okay.
I think this article is the worst possible use of a citizen's article. It's a giant waste of everybody's time.
Okay,
This is an internal personnel matter, and basically using town meeting as a hammer to try to get what you want is not what citizens articles are supposed to be.
okay, then is there a motion on the table?
I motion for it to decline this warrant article.
Would be motion to not adopt. Is the-
I someone else.
And there's a second on the motion,
Yes.
Peter? Okay, is there further discussion on the motion?
Yeah,
Yes, I
Joanna?
just want to make the comment. Oh, sorry, go ahead,
Oh,
Jill.
it's okay.
Sure.
Maybe we should like have there be a note or something, because I do think that this is going to be misconstrued by the voters, and I am concerned about that. But I also think that if you read John Giorgio's comments, to your point, there's a couple of things in here that I think need to be brought to attention, one of the word being independent HDC administrator.
Mhm.
And that's the place where I think this starts to fall apart anyway. Because it can't be, and it can't be, because they would have to, he basically says, the memorandum of understanding between the select board and the Nantucket Planning and Economic Development Commission would have to be amended to remove the HDC from the administrative management of the Plus department. So as far as I'm concerned, it fails right there. We're not gonna move the HDC out of the Plus department. No one's gonna consider that.
Okay, thank you. Stephen?
That's also my point. I mean, there may be some good,
Sorry, Stephen.
some good thoughts here. No, thank you. I agree. That's good news.
Okay, all right, so there's motion not to adopt. Is there any further discussion on the motion? In which case, roll, Jeremy?
So what you're saying is that it would be more prudent to wait before taking the vote.
No.
No, we're saying let's vote. Oh, no.
I'm saying
Sorry,
that
I'm
by
sorry.
the nature of the actual warrant article, it can't work.
To begin with.
And I got
Begin
that
with.
part. Okay.
I'll just make one more comment that I make no judgment about how the
Right.
HTC works or whether they need more resources,
Right,
all of
right.
which it's somebody else's job to figure out.
Right.
I
Correct,
just don't want to
right.
be put on the spot of trying to figure that out.
Right.
Correct. Yes, I mean, what
That's
what Libby
But-
just said about the
but
working group that's going to. take a
90%
look
of
at
that
this.
discussion is irrelevant from my perspective about the workload of the HTC.
It just should be done
It is-
appropriately.
yeah, that's what we're saying.
And I would just throw in, even if the HTC came back in complete support of Diane's article, I would still vote against it because this is an internal personnel issue and this is not the way to get new staff. This
Okay.
is,
And by the way it's written, it can't actually go into effect because
As well.
no one is gonna support removing HDC from Plus.
Okay, all right,
Okay.
so
Second, or do we have a second?
we
You
have a
a
second, yes, so roll call, Chris?
Aye.
Joanna?
Aye.
Jeremy?
Aye.
Joe?
I,
Peter?
Aye.
Jill?
Aye.
Stephen?
Aye.
Denise, aye, it's unanimous, thank you, motion not to adopt.
Okay.
Okay, now on to lighting,
Unless they don't have to do it.
okay?
Now have a bright discussion.
Oh, that was very bad, Peter. Now you need a motion on how bad the dad joke was. Very bad. Okay.
Very brief.
Gail, yeah. One second here. That's okay, no, good. So Gail, as I shared with you via email, it would be best if your presentation was 10 minutes or less, because you're only going to get 5 minutes at town meeting to begin with. So, and then allow us to ask questions, because that's what's really helpful. And I know one of your experts is here, so he can also. All right, okay, good. So Gail, over to you. Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and afternoon, everyone. I apologize in advance for my raspy voice and any coughing fits I might have. I'm afraid I've come down with a cold. And I'm also going to read a prepared statement because I have a tendency to deviate a lot, and I do want to stick with your 10-minute rule. So my article, to put it simply, is to replace the existing outdoor lighting bylaw with a new and improved bylaw, one that's consistent with current best practices for outdoor lighting and has stronger enforcement provisions. We need stronger, better regulations for a number of reasons. First, complaints about light trespass and not being able to see the stars as well are increasing all over the island. Second, evidence of harm to wildlife and human health from artificial light at night is mounting. Third, overlighting is contributing to our energy consumption problem. And last, but certainly not least, so many bright lights are starting to reduce the historic charm of Nantucket. You've been sent many passionate, heartfelt letters in support of my proposal that describe so well the impact of light pollution. I hope they help convince you that it truly is a problem and that something needs to be done about it now before it gets worse. I've mentioned in my previous written submissions that light pollution has increased 2.4% each year since 2012. That's according to satellite data, and that translates to a 24% increase over just the last 10 years. But just last week, a study was published that said light pollution is actually increasing much, much faster than the satellite data is showing, in large part because the satellites are blind to the blue light that LED emits. That suggests that the light pollution on Nantucket has actually increased a lot more than 24% since 2012. And I think that's why the complaints have increased so much. To be sure, the light pollution on Nantucket isn't nearly as bad as in many other places. We are fortunate to be among the few places in the United States where the Milky Way can still be seen, at least on some parts of the island. It's not true all over the island anymore. Astonishingly, 80% of Americans can no longer see the Milky Way where they live. But if we want to preserve our special status, we need better regulation of outdoor lighting. The endorsement of my proposal by the Nantucket Civic League, which has members from 25 neighborhoods around the island, is a good indication of how extensive the problem is and how broad the support is for my proposal. In fact, it was the executive committee of the Civic League that urged me to undertake the challenge of drafting a new bylaw to address complaints about light pollution that they had been hearing for a number of years. The endorsement of the Nantucket Historical Commission is also very meaningful. They too think light pollution is starting to erode the historic character of the island and are fully on board with my proposal. Since I've been advised to keep my opening comments to 10 minutes to allow time for public comment and of course your questions, and because I've discussed the details of the bylaw I'm proposing in my written submissions, I'm going to use the rest of my time to address upfront some of the departmental concerns that were submitted to you on Monday, as I suspect those are also your concerns.
Is this just going to duplicate what we were sent today?
Yes,
We got a very detailed
Yeah,
response to
yeah.
them, so I just asked the chair.
it will actually, Diane, we did. Gail, now got me doing it. Gail, we did get that. It got distributed to everyone. So I think that would be better served in questions and answers, to be honest.
Unless there's something additional to what was in the.
Your response was quite clear to the
Well,
issues that were raised, but go ahead.
If I
you wanna
could,
hit the top-
if I could, sorry, if I could, it sort of puts it in a summary fashion that I think might be useful.
Yes, go ahead.
So for those listening in, I just wanted to make it clear what happened. As a follow-up to the completed FinCom questionnaire, I sent the committee a very detailed comparison of the existing bylaw to the one I proposed with an explanation of why I believe each change is necessary. A link to that has been added to the Nantucket website if you'd like to review that. And I've also submitted a detailed response to the departmental comments. But I would like to just, again, in a summary fashion, address the main concerns that I saw reflected in the submission. And I grouped them into 4 categories. 1, the administrative burden and cost of implementation and enforcement. 2, the cost of the town to make its own lighting dark sky compliant. 3, safety and security. And 4, the burden on private property owners. With respect to the administrative burden and cost of implementation and enforcement, I acknowledge that implementing this proposed bylaw will not be without cost or complication. But that's true of many things worth doing. It's really a question of what we value as a community. Do we care about preserving our dark skies or not? Do we care about reducing energy consumption? Do we care about preserving our historic charm? If we do, then I've proposed a way to do all that. The cost of having a full-time employee to serve as the lighting enforcement officer can be paid for with the proposed outdoor lighting permit application fees. Those fees will be set by the town manager, and she can set them high enough to cover salary as well as benefits. Any implementation costs not covered by those fees can surely be paid out of a general fund. I'm not quite sure how that works because I wasn't able to secure a meeting with the finance director yet. But if there's a will, I'm sure there must be a way. With respect to the cost of the town to make its own lighting compliant, first, I'd like to note that the town is not in compliance with the existing bylaw. That's based on some site visits I made with a lighting designer last summer. If it were in compliance, the cost of complying with the proposed bylaw would be a lot less. So I don't think it's fair to blame all the changes that would be needed on my proposal. Second, for the most part, the town would only need to change some bulbs and add some shielding and dimmers, according to the lighting expert I consulted who helped me draft the bylaw that I've proposed. To the extent more expensive things are needed, again, it's a matter of priorities. Do we want to preserve our dark skies and all that entails or not? It's important, of course, for the town to comply if my proposed bylaw passes. It needs to lead by example. It's hard to get the rest of the community on board if the town isn't. Finally, the town will save money in the long run by making its lighting dark sky compliant. Now for safety and security concerns. First, I'd like to remind you that after many studies over the years, there's no consistent evidence that lighting reduces crime. In contrast, it's undisputed that glare reduction can improve the ability to see, which can improve personal safety because hazards and threats are easier to see. It can also make surveillance easier. But knowing that safety and security is concerned, I took that into account in the proposed bylaw in several ways. First, safety and security lighting is allowed to be on all night on residential properties. For non-residential properties, it can be on until 1 hour after closing of the business or operations. And after that, it can still be on, just as long as it's dim to at least 50% when activity isn't detected. And then there's a general exemption for temporary lighting required to save life, limb, or property from imminent peril. That covers lighting that is momentarily turned on for safety and security reasons. Finally, if a property owner can demonstrate that because of special circumstances, compliance would be detrimental to safety, a waiver can be requested. With all these provisions built in, there's nothing in the proposed bylaw that would compromise safety and security, according to the experts I've consulted. Finally, the concern about the burden on private property owners. First, in most cases, just changing bulbs and adding shielding would bring their lighting into compliance. Second, there's a 5-year grace period, which can be extended to 10 years in some cases to give folks time to prepare. And then if compliance would create an unusual hardship, a waiver can be sought. To the extent that there's any real burden on private property owners, though, I say again, it's a matter of priorities. Do we want to preserve our dark skies or not? If we do, it's reasonable to ask this of private property owners. Finally, on this front, if the proposed law passes, perhaps a program could be established to provide financial assistance to help people comply. That's certainly something I would look into. So that addresses what I saw as the main objections by town officials. They had a few others, but I'll just refer you to my written submission yesterday for my response to those. And I also want to address upfront one other somewhat related comment that a few in the community have made to me, and that is, why can't we just educate people on what the right thing to do is and convince them to voluntarily comply rather than have a formal enforcement process? Here are my thoughts on that. It's important to have updated standards on the books because trying to convince people to do the right thing is really hard when the Code of Nantucket has conflicting and out-of-date standards. For 17 years, ever since the existing bylaw was adopted, the town has basically left it up to property owners to voluntarily comply, and that simply hasn't worked. I've been trying for almost 2 years, 5 or 6 years if you count my efforts in just Wisconsin, to convince people to voluntarily comply with the existing bylaw, if not the current best practices, and there are still many, many violations. It's just virtually impossible to connect with all property owners, especially those who are seasonal residents or non-resident landlords. And some just aren't willing to make changes unless they're required to, subject to a penalty for noncompliance. For all those reasons, I really hope you'll vote to recommend passage of what I proposed with the 2 minor changes that are needed to correct the 2 mistakes I notified you about. I hope you'll agree that it's time to take preserving our night skies as seriously as other conservation and preservation efforts, that it's time to do more to protect an important part of our heritage, the dark skies that made Mariah Mitchell's discovery of Comet possible, and that residents and visitors to the island have cherished for hundreds of years. And if I can take a second, I wanted to share a little artificial intelligence humor. I asked Chat GPT the other day for a good joke about light pollution, and here's what it came up with. Why did the street light turn off? Because it saw the light. I hope you in the Nantucket community will also see the light and support my proposal. So that concludes my prepared remarks. Thank you for your careful attention to my article. I know it's a complicated one. And I want to thank everybody who has joined today to voice their support for my proposal. I hope you'll have time to hear from them. But before I turn the microphone over to you, I'd like to mention that 2 of the experts I consulted in drafting the proposed bylaw are among those participating by Zoom. I invited them to join me in answering your questions. I'd actually asked a third who was going to join, but he had to have surgery yesterday unexpectedly and was not feeling up to participating today. But on the line, you'll have Glenn Heinmiller, who's a professional lighting designer in Cambridge, and James Lowenthal, who's the president of the Massachusetts chapter of the International Dark Sky Association. The third person who was going to attend but can't is an electrician who has his own business on Nantucket and serves as the chief electrician for the White Elephant Resorts. He's been working since I think about 2006 to make their outdoor lighting dark sky compliant, going beyond what the existing bylaw requires. And he's now working to make their lighting compliant with the compliant with the proposed bylaw without even waiting to see if it passes. So I wish he could have been here to talk about all that, but unfortunately he can't. But Glenn and James, who are on the line, have both been involved in the dark sky movement a lot longer than I have, and can probably answer some of your questions much better than I can when it comes to the technical and background of light pollution, harm, and so forth. I'll leave it to each of them to explain their credentials further. Would it be okay if they did that now before you asked your questions, so that you might know who to direct your questions to?
No, I think what we'll do, Gail, first is we'll see if the committee has questions, and then if they need to answer, then at that point they can explain their credentials, because we might not even need to have them answer the questions. So that would be,
Okay.
that would be more appropriate. Thank you. And I'm sorry, who are you?
I'm Scott Wilson. I've been working with Gail on this project.
Okay,
I'm the president of the Naw Homeowners Association.
Okay.
And we're lending our support to this proposal as well. We didn't write anything in, but
okay.
I'm here to do it.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, great. So, but before we get started, Peter, I'll get to you first. Joanna, do you have to?
I don't know. I mean, we don't have a financial interest in Gail's organization.
Okay,
And like, so I didn't have any influence on this.
right.
Why might you?
This is Mariah Mitchell. And the darker the skies are.
You're not really.
Oh, I.
She's the new Mariah Mitchell.
Mitchell, I'd say recuse.
Libby knows all on this. Libby, does Joanna need to recuse?
No,
Doesn't make sense.
I don't think you do either,
Well,
but I
there's
just
no
want to make
financial
sure.
relationship.
she's not.
Where's Libby?
I'm right here. Would Mariah Mitchell have, I think you just said there would be there's no financial benefit, right? None at all. And does Mariah Mitchell, have there been like public expressions of support of this by the Mariah Mitchell?
I don't think so.
Okay,
The only thing I will disclose is that someone who works for me is on their board.
okay.
That's it.
It'd be a little careful, but I don't think it's a big problem.
Okay, good. No, I just wanted to check before we
Nope,
started.
Fair enough.
All right, Peter,
Gail,
you're up first.
my question is very, I mean, I don't think there's anybody who doesn't wish that we could have a perfectly black Nantucket outside. But right now we have light regulations that are violated by builders and architects every day. I drive past new houses that go up, don't have down lighting, they have lighting that I know is not allowed, and they get away with it. The architects get away with it and the builders get away with it. Regardless, the homeowners also, but I'm just talking specifically them. Why don't we start with very big penalties on the builders and on the architects? And let them do their job and do it right, rather than going through all these rules and all these regulations that people are not gonna be able to even read, never mind follow.
Can I answer now? Sorry.
Yes, oh, yes, of course.
That's it.
I don't know if
Yeah.
I don't know if I have to be called on.
No, please, Gail.
Yeah.
So first of all, if you don't amend the bylaw to bring it up to date with consistent regulations, you're going to be trying to impose standards that are way out of date. Secondly, legally, I don't know whether you can charge an agent for a violation. There's nothing under the bylaw that allows that. It's the property owner, him or herself. And I think one reason they get away with it is because there is no compliance review at the beginning, because it's not part of the zoning code, so it doesn't go through the building permit process. And actually, a lot of homeowners assume it is part of the building permit process. And so they are just trusting their agent to comply with the whole code. And they're thinking they only need to comply with the zoning code and the building code. So that's why part of my enforcement is to have this outdoor lighting permit process to sort of stop violations up front. And that's where I think this is going to stop. I mean, we can do a lot of outreach to architects, builders, landscapers, and whatnot, but I do think it's going to come down to if they can get away with it, they will, because their clients are saying, I want all this up lighting. It's a fad now, and they're going to say, okay. So there needs to be a process where that is just stopped at the beginning.
So when I built my house 35 or 37 years ago, we were not allowed to have any uplighting. When was that a rule back then that never really existed? That
Well, that's interesting. The existing bylaw was adopted in 2005, and that's only 17 years ago, right? So I don't know what preceded that, but uplighting has always been disfavored by dark sky advocates. So maybe there was a law in the book back then. I don't know. I didn't. I mean,
maybe the
I
guy
only
who designed my house felt that way. I don't know. Yeah.
and
Okay,
good for them.
cute.
And
Yeah.
good for them.
Other questions?
Jill has her hand.
Oh, Jill, sorry, I see your hand. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks, Gail, for the information. Did, in your, I have a few questions, so let me just get them out and whoever needs to answer them, fine. The enforcement officer that you account for, is this expected to be a new person, a new position? Is that a full-time position? That's one question. I also heard you say, I think that the LEDs are making more light pollution. I want to make sure I understood that correctly, but I guess you just want to take it from 3,000 to 2,700. So if that happened, and if our light pollution really increased 25%, I'm wondering how much of that is residential and municipal versus the airport and the school. And is all this going to apply to the school? Because I thought that the town, I actually thought any municipal building was exempted from these things.
Okay, let me, you asked a lot of questions, but let me see if I took
Thank
good
you.
enough notes. For the lighting enforcement officer position, that is an existing position. And it was just assigned to the same person who is also the zoning compliance officer. So it's considered a part-time position. But honestly, I don't know the division of labor. I just know that every time I have complained of a suspected violation, nothing has happened. I have a feeling he just doesn't have time to do both. But so and he definitely wouldn't have time to do both if the lighting permit application process stays in. I mean, Leslie Snell and I talked about that. I mean, that's going to take a full-time person. So that's why in the cost section of your questionnaire, I mentioned the need for a new person. Whether it would be Marcus or not, I don't know. My personal preference would be for it to be somebody who has a real training in lighting, maybe an electrician who knows this stuff really well, because some of the stuff is technically complicated. But if Marcus stays in that position and gives up his other position, he would definitely need some training, I think. I just as a side say, I have been working with this electrician who is the chief electrician for the White Elephants Resorts. And he actually said he's very interested in the position. He's not here to confirm it. And he said he would actually be willing to volunteer some of his time to the town in implementing this. But maybe we have a follow-up meeting when he can participate. Now about LEDs. So yes, LEDs, I meant more blue light. So that's one of the problems because it's the blue light that is harmful to animals, plants, insects, even humans. So you want to bring the color temperature down. But the other thing about LEDs is just their intensity. I mean, there's just the technology just allows a broader range of abilities. On the plus side, with LEDs, you can dim them in a way you can't with the lighting, non-LED lighting. Now, what was the other one? The other was the increase. Well, I don't think it can be blamed.
Can I just make one comment about that though, Gail? Because sorry, it is very difficult to retrofit LED lights to a dimmer. If you are changing just the trims, they do have to add like a transformer. So it's not as easy as that sounds if you ask people to change that. At least that's been my experience, because otherwise if they don't do that, then it buzzes.
I guess I would call
that'd be retrofitting existing things though.
If we can hang on for a second, wait, please. Jill, I think you actually have to recuse on this.
Why?
You're a developer.
How would that be?
But everybody's a homeowner that's on the board. I mean,
I own a home with lights. I mean, why does that make a
So,
difference?
but
I thought it was if you make money,
if you make money, if you have a financial interest.
right, in the outcome.
I don't sell lights. my
So do we
customers
think
buy
she's adding
lights.
lighting fixtures, unnecessary?
I'm not a
fixtures?
lighting dealer.
Okay, but I just, I mean, I'm always overly cautious, so Libby, I'm gonna have you jump back in on this for me.
I don't think it's a problem.
Okay,
Okay.
good, never mind, great, moving right along.
I'm not
Okay.
a wholesaler or anything, so it's not.
No, I know, but I just want to make sure that there isn't, because you know, when you build a house, there's lights on it, so. there you
Yeah,
go.
definitely. And I like, Gail, I really like a lot of what you're saying. I prefer 2,700. My clients like 3,000. That's true, but I'm more interested in about the enforcement on the municipal side and how that breaks down with residential. Because to me, when I fly in at night or something, I mean, or bring the ferry in at night, it really is a lot of municipal lighting. And I'm just wondering how much, you know, do you have a breakdown of the residential versus municipal?
Okay, I'm kind of losing track of all your questions, but I'll just answer that one first.
Sorry, I love this topic. So sorry, guys.
Yeah. That's fine. Just if we could just answer one question at a time. I think it's because of my cold. I'm having a hard time keeping up with all your questions, but I don't have any way of saying how much the increase is due to who. I can tell you from personal observation, I see it all over Sconset, and it's not from municipal lighting. We don't have an airport and we don't have a school. That's one example. I think you're seeing an increase in lighting in Mattakit where there's none of that. You're seeing it everywhere. So I don't think you can blame it just on those three. I want to say with municipal lighting, we know it's not from the street lights because the street lights haven't changed. And in fact, over that period, more and more have broken and are not working. But there has been an increase in some municipal lighting, like at 4 fairgrounds and so forth. That if you look at it from the air, that's producing a lot of light. The airport is producing a lot of light. I don't know how much that is due to federal regulations though, and I don't think we can do anything about that. The school, yes, it would apply to the school. And I was told this by Leslie as well as the current lighting enforcement officer whom she supervises. The school is exempt from zoning bylaw, but not from general bylaws. And that was one reason I wanted to keep this a general bylaw, because the school, of all the lighting on the island, I get more complaints about the school. And so even in the bylaw itself, I think there's a provision that says it applies to the schools to make that clear, because the director of facilities was insisting that the existing bylaw didn't apply to them. And Marcus, the lighting enforcement officer, said that's not true, but she wouldn't take that. So I wanted it to be clear in the new bylaw.
Okay.
Sorry, and the mention about retrofitting, I would like to turn to Glenn Heimmiller. He's the lighting design expert. He can tell you all about retrofitting. I wasn't quite sure what your question is, but I bet he understands it.
I wasn't sure either, so.
Could you repeat the questions, Jill?
Well, if this passed and everybody would go retrofit their lights, I guess I'm asking more broadly, what is the implication of that? Is it just changing the bulbs? Or like not everybody has all LED yet. I mean, most of the new things do have LED, but not everything is.
Well, I just read that the what's the right word? There's a federal law where incandescent bulbs aren't going to be able to be sold even within, like, I think it's the end of this year. So eventually everybody's going to have LED. But you don't have to have LED to comply with a lot of these requirements, except for the dimming requirement. And that would be only on non-residential property.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Other
But
questions?
Sorry, did Glenn want to add anything? Because he's the expert on these things, not me.
No, I just the fixtures used on residential properties are typically going to have a replaceable lamp. And so, they're originally designed for an incandescent lamp and you can screw in an LED lamp. So, but that just means if you need to reduce the output, you may be able to just do it by changing the light bulb, even if it's already LED. For fixtures that don't have changeable light bulbs, which would be typically used on, non-residential properties, then if the fixture is too powerful or something, you might actually have to replace it, but that's probably unlikely to be the case. Replace it or shield it. Yeah.
Thanks. Gail, I was curious if you had any estimate over the next few years how the implementation of your changes might reduce the island's total electrical consumption. So that
Okay.
can it delay putting in a third cable from the mainland? Have you given any thought to that? Have you talked to Northeast Utility at all? Or is it an unanswerable question?
I'm not sure that they can predict that. I just know that it would come down, and I just wanted to give you some numbers to think about. Lauren Sinatra, who I believe is on the phone online at the December 14th select board meeting, said energy costs rose 300% this winter, and we're seeing an unprecedented rise in our peak load growth, 8% in 1 year from this year to last year. So having lighting come down can only help that. I don't know exactly how much. And also people are putting in solar, so like it's going to be a combination of things.
Lauren's on. So Lauren, do you have any information in respect of that for Jeremy?
I have some general information. I don't have the statistics in front of me, but I can get them. But our peak load last year occurred around 4 p.m. It's typically between 4 and 8 p.m. So lighting loads, especially exterior lighting loads, such as those on photo cells, wouldn't be contributing to our peak load. Most of the peak load is residential in nature and has to do with non-lighting loads specifically. So it might be a bit of a stretch to say that lighting would defer the third cable, not to say that there wouldn't be energy savings, but I'm concerned about swapping out low wattage LEDs that are currently existing with other LEDs and what happens to all of that unnecessary waste with perfectly usable LEDs that are installed right now. But yeah, in terms of energy consumption, there will be reductions, but not to the point where it will dramatically impact the deferral of the third cable.
Could I respond, please? I would like to push back a little bit. First of all, I just said it would help defer. I know it's not going to defer. I mean, it's not going to be only up to lighting, but in the winter, lights come on starting 4 or 5 when it gets dark. And so if everybody's got all this light on, I think it would affect the peak load.
But we don't need a third cable in the winter.
Yeah,
We need a
the
third
peak loads in
summer.
the summertime. That's correct.
Okay.
Summer,
For 1 month.
not in the winter. Okay, other questions, Chris?
I'm gonna try. I mean, I probably have more of a comment that I hope leads to a question here. First of all, I'm super appreciative of all the work and the detail. I don't know if we brought a better researched and more thoughtful and harder worked on citizen article here.
Ever.
And I'm super sympathetic to the cause. I'm an amateur stargazer myself. I think the clouds have been the problem this winter. But that being said, now I'm going to ask a bunch of questions that seem like I don't like the intent of this article, which is not the case. But the struggle I'm really having is the approach. And I really appreciate the questions around kind of what's really causing it. And could you attack the biggest causes as opposed to this kind of comprehensive approach? Because I have hundreds of questions. If we were to go through, which I'm not going to ask that we sit here and do tonight, but if we were going to head towards a positive recommendation on this as it exists and make this law, I think we need probably a full day session, if not more, with all the experts to go through piece by piece, because we'd be recommending to make this the law of the land. It's incredibly complicated, incredibly comprehensive. I spent hours on Amazon.com this last week trying to understand how I would buy lighting that would comply with this, looking for lumen counts and the color, the heat color of the light. And it's not there. So making this as it exists, the law for our neighbors and the community, I think is super hard. And I hate the fact that it's kind of headed, that would head us towards a hard no, because I really like what this is trying to accomplish. And I guess that's my comment, that I think an approach here that divided up this task and went after pieces of it, went after municipal causes, went after residential causes, looked at the current bylaw and what's not happening on the enforcement side that could happen on the enforcement side would be an interesting approach. But I think this is a super hard article to try to make the law. And I guess my question maybe is to you, if that's where we're headed, then I think we're going to need a ton more time on this to do our duty, which is to thoroughly investigate every article to come up with a recommendation.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Other comments or questions?
May I respond, Madam Chair?
Not yet, Gail. Thank you. Other comments and questions from the committee? I mean, to kind of tie, Stephen, did you want to say something?
Yeah, but go ahead. Mine's not more important than what we have to say.
Okay, no, my other thought of this is probably along the lines of what you said, Chris, but maybe a slight tweak, which was, you know, Gail has put a tremendous amount of effort into best practice. And when you want change to happen, best practice is to get the people who have to do it, who aren't in favor of it, who have some issues with it, at the table and constructively being able to contribute to the article. So whilst I appreciate that there was 20 letters representing thousands of people who are in favor of this, I also appreciate that the town administration had some concerns and were not at the table prior to this article getting put in complete to the level where they could be comfortable with it. Right. So I'm not saying you haven't spoken to them, Gail, but what I'm saying is I'm missing that best practice element of getting change to happen in a constructive way. Because I think if I could have seen Marcus and Libby and everybody jump in and say, you know what, it's going to cost money, but we can figure this out over the next 2 or 3 years. And yes, we're going to be able to do this because it's the right thing to do for the island. That would have been just the icing on the dark skies cake. So Gail, you can comment, and then Lynn, I'll go to you.
So I just had a visceral reaction to what you just said. I really did try to get town officials at the table about this. It started out, Leslie, you know, we were going to put together a working group. And I think it's just because everybody's so busy, they didn't have time. And so I said, well, I'm going to go forward with the citizen warrant article then, because I don't want a whole another year to go past. So I would welcome a full session if needed to hash this out. I mean, possibly changes could be considered and made. But I wanted to go back. Chris actually did sort of have a question that I heard it anyway. He said, problem with approach, perhaps you could start, we understand you were saying, perhaps you could start with non-residential. This is where it's really important to talk to the people who have written to you or are on the line, because it's really bad neighbor lighting that's affecting people. So you're not going to solve all the light trespass problems and the sky glow problems by just starting with non-residential. I mean, I would love, of course, them to all come into compliance, but regulating residences is equally important, in my opinion.
Yeah, I guess maybe I didn't speak clearly. I was just using that as an example. And if and I think to your point, Denise, what you'd have to do what you recommend is parse this out a little bit, right?
Yeah.
And take it in pieces and find the stakeholders. So residential is one set of issues. This kind of blanket approach, the problem is it's easy to find people who are going to have problems with all kinds of little pieces with it, and loading it all into this one by matching it up with kind of the aspirational guidelines of the International Dark Sky, certification process. I think you create too many problems one by one. You've got to break this problem down before I would support kind of a blanket law like this.
If I could just make a brief comment and then turn it over to James Lowenthal. So lots of towns around the United States and around the world are taking this approach. It's not like it's like we made it out of blue. It's bringing in the best practices, which I think are needed. I'm not doing this strictly to get that International Dark Sky Community certification. However, I think their stringent requirements for regulations are something we should aspire to. And I mean, writing a bylaw like this is you have to address the 4 aspects of lighting that causes the problem: shielding, color temperature, brightness level, and hours. So that just makes it complicated in itself. And then you throw in exceptions that you need. And then you have to think about, well, do you want to prohibit altogether? And then you think about enforcement. I don't think these are controversial. And I think there's huge support for it. But if I could turn that over to James Lowenthal.
No, not yet, Gail. It's not, sorry.
Oh, sorry, you have to do that.
And Lynn had her hand up first, but first Joanna.
So
FinCom goes first.
I did also hear another question in your comment.
Thank you guys for parsing.
Here to help, Chris.
I'm particularly interested in the answer to. So Gail, tell me about, you address, Chris, like a source of supply, right? So if you can't go on Amazon and buy the things that you need to buy to comply with the bylaw, I think that would be a potential issue, right? Because
You might be able to buy them, you just don't know if you're buying them. You can't get the information out that matches up. I wasn't able to, maybe I'm not clever enough, but I wasn't able to match up the information.
so meaning that as a consumer, if I went to Amazon to buy light bulbs or a lighting fixture that complied with the guidelines, I wouldn't easily be able to determine what product to buy.
I wasn't able to.
That's what you're saying.
Mm,
I don't
I-
agree.
You don't agree with that?
I don't agree with Chris. I bought lighting, I mean. You
On
can,
a-
you can.
On a
you-
lumen
you-
basis,
you-
on a light, on a
Yes,
heat
you
basis.
can get color
Okay.
temperature and all that kind of stuff. So,
Okay, okay.
It may,
I didn't look, right? So that was just
I
something
wasted hours of my week. because I couldn't
Joe to buy them for you.
Yeah, I
Yes, the message.
Probably buy at fancier places than I do, Joe.
Right.
may I
So
answer that?
okay.
I have a couple.
Joe, let Joanna please, Gail.
So I've just got a couple of other things I want to say. I think that, the other thing about this particular article, that is coming up is enforcement. And we've had many people come before us and with articles that we've struggled to adopt because enforcement might be difficult. And some of those we've adopted and some of those we haven't. And one of the reasons is that sometimes we've agreed that the example we're setting for the town has outweighed really whether or not we're able to enforce the article.
Mhm.
So I think that's something that we should look at in terms of this. And then I think the other piece of it is that in terms of enforcement, I also think we're coming up against a bunch of different things that we've agreed to work on and adopt, and there isn't enough resources for enforcement. Right, so sort of, this is a broader issue because we're also talking about positions that are in plus that are divided in half, but we have enforcement issues in the health department. Right, we have issues in other departments that we've agreed to have bylaw changes to. So I worry about that a bit. But at the same time, so in full disclosure, this is my Mariah Mitchell thing coming out. We are one of the last places on the East Coast that you can see the Milky Way with your bare eye.
Right.
And I would really hate for that to go away and at all, right? And I think that, in terms of what we're doing as a group, if we have to decide to adopt this versus not do it, I'd rather do that, right? Because obviously, like, I support this article. I think it's good for Nantucket. But I recognize that there could be issues with the implementation.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Lynn, I'll have you talk, and then Gail, you can speak after Lynn, because Lynn's
Sorry.
been waiting patiently.
I heard a question in Joanne's comment. Can I not answer that?
All right, go ahead, but be quick, please.
She asked about the source of with the bulbs to comply. I just wanted to add that Jeremiah's already talked to the lighting suppliers on Nantucket and trying to get them to stock all the right products.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just leave it at that.
Lynn?
Hi, I'm Lynn Filipski. I'm the president of the Sconset Civic Association, of which Gail had been a member for over 7 years. And this was a topic that came up within the Civic Association due to our survey for all residents when we were writing our master plan for the town. And this was a key concern that came to us in the survey as well as in member meetings. Gail is very adept at explaining what lights that you can get and has presented at our Civic Association meeting. And people can be educated fairly easily on what lumens and color temperature really means and what to do. So what we were trying to do in Sconset was change the lighting pattern by educating people, because we're becoming a little bit like suburbia with uplighting. And yes, the problem is the enforcement officer is finished with his day, I think, at 5 o'clock. And all lighting problems happen, obviously, in the dark. So I think you have to be creative when you think Gail's warrant article provides for more enforcement, and maybe you have flexible hours for Marcus, maybe you have an additional part-time worker, but that is no reason to us that we think you should give up on it, because the Civic Association passed a policy point that we are committed to advocating in favor of legislation, regulations, ordinances, and any other course of action that would reduce light pollution in our village and hopefully the island. So as Gail has educated us, we think it's the right thing to do. And we think that the village is certainly behind it, and the Civic League is behind it. Things can be tricky and complicated when you're trying to do the right thing, but we think it's worth it. And we applaud Gail for her actions and leading us to where we should be in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. And I have a question for you. If the village is behind it, why is it a problem in Sconset?
Because you have new people who are moving and building things in our village that are very new, like Canterbury Lane, which is the southern part of the village, has yet to really join the Civic Association in Sconset. So they have uplighting, they have lights up from the roof so that they think they're about to be mugged by a deer or something. So they are providing extra wattage that they don't need. So we go over and over this in meetings, and on our website, we have a whole page on it. And it is an education process. The people that are in the SOH certainly are pretty good at complying. And where a lot of people won't even report when one of the big town lights or National Grid lights go out because they want it to stay dark. So there is a movement of not even replacing what is on major street lights. And the whole village was totally appalled by what went in on Milestone Road. And luckily that was rectified in a better manner. So it is a process, and you won't get 100% compliance out of everyone, but we do have a movement going, and I applaud that, and I hope it continues year by year.
Thank you, Lynn. Stephen, and then James, I'll go to you after Stephen.
Thank you. Through you to Gail or whomever else on the call can answer. Is there any estimate for the number or percentage of homes that are not in compliance today? And then further, is there any estimate for the cost that would be incurred by private homeowners to come into compliance?
Thank you, Stephen. Gail?
Yep. Sorry, I've lost my view. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, sorry. So an estimate of the number of not in compliance, I would say I don't have it. I wish Jeremiah Stratman, the electrician, was here, because he does walks all around the island, and he's constantly sending me pictures of people who he thinks is not in compliance. And part of the problem is when you report a suspected violation to the lighting enforcement officer, basically nothing happens. I mean, I've tested that myself and just not gotten a response. And that is a common complaint on social media. So I don't think there are records about how many are not in compliance because they're not being investigated. But just my personal observation.
What is moorming?
I'm sorry. I heard something. Anyway, what was the other? You said estimated cost of compliance for
what are the types of violations? What are the types of issues that are causing the non-compliance, and how easily or how difficult would they be to rectify? For
like I said,
homeowner, I'm talking about.
For the private, I think I said in my opening comments, I suspect that most of them just need to replace their bulb, bring the lumen output down, and also the color temperature down. Maybe you have to redirect some spotlights.
Are we talking about $100? Is it $1,000 per home? What are we talking about?
Well, I don't know what the average number of lights in a home. I think that's impossible for me to answer. On my home, it would.
Well, it's a pertinent question. If we're going to ask people to vote for new regulations that are going to put them in, out of compliance, and then they have to pay to get into compliance, we ought to have some estimate. Is it half of all people? Is it half of all people will pay $500? I mean, what are we talking about?
I don't know how you expect me to know the answer to that or how to get it. I mean, do you want me to go door to door? Do you want me to take a poll? Tell me what you want and I'll try to get it.
Yes, I suppose that would be the thing to do. If you're identifying that there's a problem, you must have some informal survey work that's led you to this conclusion. So you have the answers better than anybody else, I suppose, except maybe some other people on this call. I see hands raised from James and Glenn. Maybe they have answers.
So James, did you want to add something? And then I'll go to Glenn, and then I'll go to Kathy, and then actually I'm going to bring this to an end. And we will discuss it again at a future meeting. So.
Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I'm a professor of astronomy at Smith College. I'm sitting in my office in Northampton, Massachusetts. I lead the Massachusetts chapter of the International Dark Sky Association. I also lead.
Anyway. Can you mute him?
Yeah, I just did.
Jones.
I also
Sorry.
lead national, international, and then very local efforts to combat light pollution in various ways. So I want to put this in the perspective that it really is a movement, as Lynn called it. It's an international movement. There are many thousands of people working on this issue for all the reasons that were cited. Not just saving the view of the Milky Way, but human health, the health of wildlife. Every species that's studied, from insects, including pollinators that our food chain depends on, to mammals, birds, amphibians, fish, even coral, everything is negatively affected by light pollution. So it touches on many different scientific, quality of life, economic issues. As I said, it's a worldwide movement. Here in the US, there are thousands of communities that have adopted bylaws similar to this. This is not really that new. Here in Massachusetts, there are easily 50 communities that have some kind of bylaw on the books, either zoning or general bylaws related to lighting and light pollution. There are some nations that have light pollution laws, France, Chile, Italy. All the elements of the proposed bylaw are consistent with best practices about glare and brightness and color and timing. They're all important components. And regarding which parts of Nantucket are the most egregious offenders currently, roughly it's generally roughly half municipal street and parking lot, and the other half private and commercial, residential and commercial. It depends. We could do a careful survey, but the answer is going to be they're both important. But the answer is also that it's a win-win for everybody if this passes, and I urge you to pass it. It's a win for the environment. It's a win for human health. It's a win for wildlife, and long-term, it's a win for the economy. And the question is a good one about how much is it going to cost us all. If I could just give a little personal example, and then a municipal example. You can come look at my house, or I'll send you pictures here in Northampton. It is so easy to get this right. It's so easy and it's so cheap. We all know that if you use a flashlight at night, you use the flashlight by pointing down at the ground or whatever you're trying to look at. You don't shine the flashlight in your own eye. It's easy. It's as easy as that. And you can go into any hardware store and buy light bulbs that would comply with the proposed bylaw. The light bulbs all have the color temperature on them and the lumens, and some of them are better than others. If you've got a particular fixture that has glass sides and the light goes out sideways, that's not good. You can get a light bulb where it goes straight down, and I'm happy to help with that. But it's just that it's not that hard to do. It might take some education. I can't solve your education problem. And I can't tell you exactly how much it's going to cost each person, but in general, it is easy to do. On the municipal side, Pepperell, Massachusetts is a good example. They recently replaced their municipal streetlights with LEDs, and they went through an extensive public process where they had a number of different fixtures on display, and people universally voted for, or let's say by a great majority, voted for the light that had the least amount of blue, which is good for all the reasons that we've discussed already, which had the least amount of glare, and which was the lowest lumens. All the things that this bylaw is asking for, that's what they voted for, that's what they preferred. And it turned out those were the least expensive ones for the city. So the town got to save money on the fixtures themselves, and the town gets to save money and electricity going forward because they're the lowest wattages. So I really think it's win-win. You have a tremendous, incredible, rare resource on Nantucket, and I urge you to do what you can to save it and for future generations. I think this bylaw does just that. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Before I call on anyone else, I just want to take a temperature check of the committee. We are past time by 10 minutes. We're not going to get to an answer on this today, for sure not. Do we listen to people with their hands up, or do we just draw a line under it and invite them back for the next time? What's the preference of the committee?
How many do we have? One,
Three.
Yeah.
I'm fine to stay.
Why don't we just say?
Let's do the last
We're
three.
done by 6:30.
Yeah, I'm late for something. If we just keep
Yeah.
it brief, that's all.
Yeah.
Okay, so with that, Glenn, you're next up, and brief is better than long.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that what a homeowner would have to do if they were in non-compliance. A lot of them will probably have to do nothing, but it could be as simple as changing a light bulb, which is, a couple of bucks, or 10 light bulbs, maybe 10 couple of bucks. If they were to have to change the fixture, this is not esoteric technology. This is off-the-shelf stuff. And I'm sure that Home Depot would be very happy, or whoever, to come up with a list of fixtures that comply with the regulations. So this is it's easy to do. The only thing I say is this is a topic I'm passionate about as a lighting designer. My job is to light for comfort and safety and satisfaction, but with minimal environmental impact. And I offer myself to the committee and the town as an expert to offer answer questions in the future if we convene on this again.
Thank you. We will convene on it again, Glenn. Thank you for that. So thank you. Kathy?
Hi, I just wanted to be very brief. Neighbors of the Sconset folks, and we're out in Tom Nevers, and I just wanted to say I support this article. I've become familiar with it and working with Gail on it to help improve it. I think that, my kids, when they were growing up, they slept out on the deck every night to watch the stars. You can still do that out in Tom Nevers. There are places on the island you cannot do that anymore. And my grandkids are now doing the same thing. So I think that it's just something that we have. It's one of the special treasures. We should try to not lose it. I think enforcement's always an issue with things like this, but I think if the town were to support this and the voters were to support this, there would be an awful lot of general compliance that would be helpful as well. So I just want to say I'm supporting it myself out on 7 Gloucester Street. And we also had Gail speak to the Tom Nevers Civic Association this summer about this issue, which was very important to our residents in the area. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. And then Mr. Jones, Mark, it's Mark. Okay. Mark.
Are you asking for Jones?
Yes.
Oh, hi, how are you? My name is Bardwell Jones, over here on 6 East Lincoln with my wife who's sitting next to me. We have a burdensome light problem from the houses around us. There's a serious light trespass issue coming from the houses, and it stems from the exterior lights, which are unshielded. And I think that most of it's from what maybe it's called these onion lights, although there are a lot of other types of fixtures as well. Now, in our house, we just bought this summer down lights. You can go on, it's not a complicated thing. All you look for is a down light. And that light obviously is projected down and not out towards our neighbors. They can enjoy the nighttime without our lights shining in their eyes or into their house. So at night, we've got to pull the shades down, can't have the shades up and let the air come in because the neighbor's lights go right into our window and you can't sleep. So really, I know the other gentleman said that a lot of this was complicated, but I'm not that complicated. And to me, you just look for a light that is, it's a simple, is the light shielded or is it not? That's the question. And if we could get lights that are shielded, we could solve a lot of the problem. And I think it's a very easy fix.
Okay.
Thank you. So I support the bylaw proposal.
Thank you. Thank you for joining.
What he said is not complicated. That's just not what the bylaw says.
So thank you. Okay. Scott, you were here patiently.
Just a couple of things. The bylaw does provide 5 years to get the house changed over. And that's extendable on application good cause. It also has provision for enforcement by citizens, which is a citizen can rat out the offender.
That's what I
enforcement
wrote down,
officer.
actually.
Welcome to the
I think the enforcement officer have to take action.
I'm sure that's how it's currently being handled.
And the other one is, I think the biggest offenders are the uplightings. And the way to stop uplightings is to turn them off. And there's no real cost for that.
Thank you, Scott. Thanks for being here as well. Okay. Review and I'm going to, Gail, thank you very much. We are obviously going to need to speak about this again. And I will send you an email and let you know at least a week in advance when you will be back on the agenda. So thank you very much for your, as Chris pointed out and Joe seconded, if you will, this is probably the most comprehensively thought out citizens warrant article that at least I've seen in my tenure on FinCom, and it's very much appreciated your civic engagement on this topic. It's important, and thank you. So, okay, review and discussion of the fiscal year 2024 county budget.
Could I just back up on this? What is our process to get more information on this before we have a discussion and a vote?
So we will basically do the same thing we did tonight. So Gail will come back, we'll continue to ask questions, the experts will come back and.
But I thought one of the questions that you raised was you wanted other constituents to weigh in on this.
No, we do have the town's answers to that
Yeah,
already.
we do.
Yes, yes, we have it.
Yeah. So are we, okay, so we can learn more about each of the components in this. But are we then seeking to change some of these things to take in advice of different constituencies?
We don't do that.
No, we don't
I
do
know,
that.
and because that's why I'm asking.
Right.
So then I was asking, I guess, process, what are we seeking to accomplish by the next review of this?
So Chris raised earlier that he would not be comfortable at this point making a motion that is so, on an article that is so broad and will impact people significantly, because actually one of the issues I would have would be citizens turning in each other, right? So the enforcement going through that way, people complaining, and all of a sudden it's, you know, not a good situation. But back to the point is, I think there's more questions to be asked. And, you know, I would ask Chris in particular to go back and say, okay, which are the areas that you really want answers to? Send them to me. I can send them to Gail, and then Gail can be prepared to talk about them in a couple of weeks' time, because we have to make our final motions by March 14th, I think is the date. So we do have time to do more investigation and ask and get, for example, Marcus to potentially join.
That would be it.
And.
How do we
So-
resolve something like, the chief says it's a problem for law enforcement, the petitioner says it's, many reports say that's not true. How do we close those gaps, or
Well, we have to use our own judgment. That's what our judgment is for.
Yeah.
So there's always, I mean,
So what I think I'm hearing is we're going to explore each of the component issues within this, or some of them, more in depth, so we ourselves can make a judgment call.
yes.
This is really what we're trying to do.
So each one of us will do the research we need to do, or have questions that we need to have answered in order to be comfortable with what the motion is. So potentially people who know more about this than I do less research. You know, so, I mean, I remember last year's article about fertilizer. I know now more about fertilizer than I'd ever hoped to know. So, and so it's, you know, it's the research, then ask questions. And then if you have questions you'd like Gail to answer, send them to me and I'll forward them to Gail and make sure she has them far enough in
So
advance.
last question, just to be clear. Pulling in other constituencies that will be impacted, that'll be up to the individual member of the committee doing their own research to get them comfortable.
No, so that would be when I was referring to other constituencies, I was referring to the town manager, the town lighting enforcement person, the town chief of police, the plus department, whoever would have to, the people who are going to be most impacted by this passing within the town
So
administration.
we want to hear from them.
So we have heard from
We
them.
have in writing.
Right, and then if we need further clarification on their points, then I will pass that on to Libby, and then Libby will make sure we get the answers before we discuss it again. Does that make sense?
Yes, so the individual members of the finance committee will provide to you
Any,
questions to those different constituencies that they wish answered.
yeah, and I will forward it to Libby, and then
Got it.
Libby will parse it out to whoever should answer it, and then if it's questions for Gail, I'll forward them to Gail, and she'll get the right people to answer.
Can I thought I heard you ask though in the beginning, maybe I misheard about relating to, could we make a motion that was something different than this? Did you ask that?
Well, I apologize in that I'm still learning.
No, it's
No,
not
no,
cool. I just want to make sure we're clear.
But there's a distinction. One is to ask different constituencies' opinions so we can make a judgment call on the whole. In a different world, we might ask for it to be amended slightly to take into account those concerns.
And we can
But
do
we
that.
don't do that.
We can do that. Yeah, that's what I thought I heard. And I didn't want you to be misinformed. on
We
that.
can do it, but we can't do it to the point of rewriting the whole thing.
Right.
Got it, okay.
So, you and I have had conversations about why can't we fix something? We can't fix it. We can potentially say it could be implemented in 3 years instead of 1 year. It could be for a dollar
Okay.
amount that's
And
different.
we could make recommendations to Gail
Yes,
to make
yes.
changes to it.
But that's a good thing.
Yeah.
At least my thinking is. Okay, I understand.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to make sure
Got
it's
it,
clear.
just-
Okay, all right. So Gail, again, thank you. And budget, fiscal year 2024 county budget.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Scott's gonna go apply to be a FinCom now, I can tell. Scott's like, I'm in, I'm all in.
Yeah, you can have this seat.
Can I just tell one just tiny little thing? I flew to South America the other day. And I flew to Buenos Aires 2.5 weeks ago and landed at 4 a.m. So I flew over the bulk of Argentina with no cloud cover. And I was actually awake between 3 and 4 a.m. And I could not believe all the cities that were so brilliantly lit up. And more so than anything I've ever seen going across the United States in the middle of the night. And all I could think of was, what a waste of energy costs for a country that's so mucked up. Anyway, I just tell you that because we're dealing with something here and I could not believe what I saw.
Thank you. Okay, is Brian ready to take us through the county
He is.
budget? Thank you, Brian.
Have 9 minutes.
It'll be 5. I saw
I
it
have
last
not-
select board.
I have 9 minutes. I hopefully can do it in 9 minutes or less, actually. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the FinCom. And where did it go?
Right there.
I'm sorry,
It's
I moved it to the other screen. I'll share it right now.
Thank you.
So they could see it here too. It's
Okay.
complicated.
It's complicated, Brian.
You see it
I
now?
know. Okay.
There are
Um,
2 county agencies, county administration and registry of deeds.
You're doing great so far, Denise, actually.
I saw you last night. I
I know.
had it memorized.
So we're here to talk about the county budget proposal. As Denise so aptly mentioned, there are two offices within the county administration, and then the registry of deeds, which has administration and then deeds excise. Next. The revenue sources within the county are the town assessment, deeds excise revenue, the recording fees that the registry collects, corrections deeds excise, which was specifically allocated, and you'll see it on the expense side, it's specifically allocated payment towards the debt service affiliated with the construction of the public safety bill complex at 4FG, specifically the police side. If we don't have enough revenue, depending on the necessity, it could come from registry of deeds, excise fund balance, or the county fund balance. Next slide or next page, please, Maria.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. Thank you. Projected revenue for the county for fiscal 24, the town assessment is projected to be $179,075. Deeds excise receipts, which are projection is given to us by Jen Ferreira, the registrar, $584,300 $25 broken down between county admins in the recording process, county administration and registry of deeds, 350,625 and 233,750 respectively. Recording fees of $171,500. And then, as I mentioned, the corrections deeds excise is the $250,000 allocation. Everything goes according to plan. We're projecting $1,184,950 in revenue for the year. I think there's one slide. Is there one before that, Maria, or is that okay?
Nope.
No, that's fine. I thought they were in a different order, even though I only did this last night. To get to the town assessment, which is called the county funding requirement. It's also known as the maintenance of effort. By law, the county must provide a certain amount of non-deeds excise revenue to the registry every year. That amount begins the calculation. It's increased by 2.5% per year. The basis for that calculation for the fiscal 24 budget is $363,574. And then we ultimately back out the $171,500 in estimated recording fees to ultimately get to the town assessment of $179,075. Next page. Thank you. Town manager and myself are recommending for county administration $258,984, which is level funded. There are no employees funded directly through the county. Main expenses for the county are mainly comprised of legal and professional services. Registry of Deeds does have 3 full-time employees and then other administrative expenses. And from time to time, the state does ask for special projects to be funded within the budget relative to the Registry of Deeds office. So that would be where they would be funded from. We're recommending $547,580 in expenses to operate the registry. Public safety facility debt service, which is ultimately a transfer to the general fund to pay that portion, the $250,000 portion of the debt service for the public safety facility. We're projecting total expenses of $1,056,564. Next page. Thank you, Maria. Comparatively speaking with the fiscal 23 budget, as you'll notice, we approved a budget of $1,032,663 last year. We're recommending $1,056,564 this year, an increase of about just under $24,000, a little over $24,000. Mainly, the increase is really driven mainly in the payroll in the Registry of Deeds for all the benefit costs and any projected increases for the staff within the office. Other than that, the budget remains relatively similar to the prior year and consistent with the approach on a year-over-year basis. And I'll be happy to answer any questions, Madam Chair, from any of the members of the committee.
Thank you, Brian. Any questions? Seeing none, do you need a motion to approve? No, it gets passed as part of one of which article? Which article is it in the
It's
warrant?
the county assessment. I think it's 25 or 20. I haven't seen the final numbering, but I think that's what it is.
Okay, so I guess.
Do we need a motion to adopt it, or no? We do that in the regular motion, right?
Yeah, I guess it doesn't really matter. Either way. It doesn't.
Let's just do it.
Yeah.
Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Roll call, Chris.
Aye.
Joanna. Jeremy.
Aye.
Joe.
Aye.
Peter.
Aye.
Jill.
Aye.
Stephen.
Aye.
Denise, I passes unanimously. Thank you. I am going
And
to.
I came
skip
in
over-
under the time limit.
As always, Brian.
Good job, Brian.
Good job, Brian.
Always.
Committee reports for skipping, other business for skipping. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Roll call, Chris,
Aye.
Joanna,
Aye.
Jeremy,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Peter,
Aye.
Jill,
Aye.
Stephen,
Joanne.
Aye.
Denise, I. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. See you Saturday.